All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's WORSPA live stream featuring Hampden Estate, which I feel like people have been just waiting to hear from in this series. I know everyone's really excited. So today we have your host, Matt Petrick, who is joined by three special guests from the team at Hampden. We have Kenroy Gordon, Peppie Grant, and Christelle Harris. I'm going to let Matt introduce you to them more formally in just a second. Before we jump in real quick, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co and just want to point out, as always, a few different ways that you can interact with each other and with Matt and the guests throughout the presentation today. So on your right, you'll notice a chat box over there. I see several of you have already found it. So feel free to just say hello and let us know where you're joining us from in the world. It's always cool to see that. I see we already have people from all over Czech Republic, London, New York, Panama, Florida. So that's always super cool to see. Secondly, if you have a question about Hampden, about any of the content in the presentation today, there's a little button at the bottom of the screen that says ask a question. So just press that button, enter your question in, and we'll be keeping an eye out for those and try to save some time at the end for that. And last but not least, feel free to invite your friends to join us. There's a little share button at the top that makes it easy to do that. But with that said, Matt, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be here again. I think this is number 14 or 15 in our Rum Talk series. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, perhaps, this is a series that we at WORSPA, the West Indies Rum and Spirits Producers Association, we came up with when the pandemic started and people weren't able to travel and everybody was going online. We thought it was a great opportunity to bring the rum makers to you, primarily the enthusiast public, the rum lovers. And over the past, year and a half or so, it seems like we have been doing these live streams with distillers and people making the rum, trying to get you behind the scenes and get very technical, rather than marketing and expression. Like we want people to actually know how the rum is made. And so I'm particularly excited for this particular one. I will tell you that Hampden Estate was sort of my introduction to high ester Jamaican rum, and the visiting Hampden was just like a complete dream when I did it back in 2016, and it was sort of so eye-opening, and I took some of those experiences and wrote about them over the years, and writing about dunder and muck and cane acid, things like that. So I'm incredibly excited and honored to be hosting the session today. So I'll stop talking now and turn it over to Kenroy, Peppie, and Christelle. And I've never met Kenroy, but I've met Peppie and Christelle before. So Kenroy and Peppie, why don't you two start out? Tell us what you do at Hampden.
Go ahead first.
Okay, I'm Kenroy Gordon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kenroy Gordon. I'm the Quality Control Officer here at Hampden Distillery. So I'm basically in charge of all quality aspects from raw materials, the process, and the final product. I am also in charge of blending and aging.
Hello, rum lovers. I am Peppie Grant, and I do a little bit of everything, right? As long as the sun shines and the rain falls, I am in it. So I manage the tours. We have a little stud farm here that I also manage, and I also do other aspects here at the distillery as well. Wherever it's needed, I'm there.
Excellent. And I know many of you have met Christelle over the years, but for those of you who haven't, Christelle, tell us a little bit about you and your connection to Hampden. You're muted.
I was muted.
There we go. Now.
Typical. Hi, everybody. Everybody who knows me know that's not very surprising. Hi, Matt. Thanks for the intro. Hi, Peppie. Hi, Kenroy. People often think that because we live in the same place, we see each other, but I haven't seen either of you in a very long time. So nice to see you. I'm Christelle Harris, for those of you who don't know, and I'm a director of Hampden Estate. My family took over the estate 10 plus years ago, and we're very proud to be able to have diversified the way that Hampden is enjoyed and increased the accessibility of information to do with Hampden to rum lovers everywhere. Thank God that audience is rightfully growing. So we're happy to be on the train at this time, kind of, as far as I'm concerned, leading the train. I don't know, I might be a little biased, but might be a reasonable assumption at the same time. I do not really have very much to do with the day-to-day operations of the distillery at all. I'm not there. I'm in Kingston. I do participate in the management of a lot of the companies within our group, which spans different industries. Well, obviously rum, but also retail, pharmaceutical, gaming, hospitality, dry cleaning, kind of you name it. So, and obviously horse racing as well. And as Peppie said, he is the stud farm manager. So that ties in there. But I'm not really at the distillery that much. I'm very proud that I took Rum Fire on the road. So I took Hampden's first product since we took over ownership on the road. And I really learned a lot about the rum community and rum production in general from traveling and meeting meeting rum lovers. So it's really kind of come full circle. I'm more based at home now because of the pandemic, but it's really nice that now we're getting the opportunity to use this forum to meet our fans and our audience again. And I'm really happy to be able to include the people that are really behind the juice. I've created the partnerships, and I've met the people that we work with, and I think I've created synergies and appreciation internationally and a face to put to the brand. But now I think it is the time for the people behind the juice to really get a chance to represent it as well. So I'm very happy to be able to do that, kind of starting now.
Well, thank you, Christelle, and I will echo your last point there. That's what we're trying to do here with this series. We're trying to get people, the behind the scenes information and meet the rum makers, meet the people who are doing day-to-day work on it. So we're very happy to have this. So with that said, let's jump into the presentation. Peppie, I think you're leading off.
Oh, or am I? I don't know. I'll start.
Okay, you go, Christelle.
Welcome to Hampden Estate. Well, to Rum Talk with Hampden Estate, featuring myself to a lesser extent, and to a greater extent, Peppie Grant, who is going to take us through a bit of the geography and history of Hampden Estate, leading into present day, and then we're going to get to really the meat of the matter, or should I say the esterificness, that's not a word, of the matter with Kenroy. So if we can start with you, Peppie, you can take it away.
Sure. So, rum people, hello again from beautiful Hampden in Trelawney. Trelawney is located in the northwest part of Jamaica. Hampden Estate is bordered really two parishes, Trelawney and St. James, right? We're located in the Queen of Spain Valley. Trelawney faces the Caribbean Sea with fertile plains in the north and cockpit country in the south. Cockpit country is an unspoiled mountainous area covered in tropical forest. And you could skip. So, since 1753, the end of the 19th century, Jamaica had 148 distilleries. Today, only 6 remains. 1852, George MacArthur Lawson developed the method of producing the most aromatic rums with high levels of esters. Hampden has been producing full, intense flavorful, heavy pot still rums since the late 1700s, historically. Hampden produced unaged rums and shipped in bulk to Europe. Although the business model has diversified, this practice is maintained. Hampden rums currently go up to 1,600 esters, but we could go further. Personally, I can tell you that I've seen 5,000 to 7,000 esters.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'll just jump in really quick and mention that that limit is like you mentioned, not at all technical. It's actually a Jamaican regulation. It's been in effect since 1934. The Jamaican spirits pool at the time said, we're going to top it off at this. And they still enforce that today. I asked, and they still enforce it today.
Right. So we do make higher esters, but hey, only Kenroy, myself, and Christelle get to marvel at that, right? One day when you guys come, we'll see. So to continue with the history of Hampden, Hampden was first surveyed in 1684 by Thomas Goddard, formalized as Hampden Estate in 1753, and operated as a large sugar plantation under the ownership of Sir Archibald Stirling of Scotland. Stirling built the Hampden Great House in 1779. The ground floor served as the rum storage area. The upper level, the residential structure, was added in 1799. Today, the fire brigade will never allow such a thing as for you to have a rum store and then live on top, right? That will never be passed, but it is what it is back then. By 1767, Hampden was producing 122 puncheons, which are wooden casks of rum per annum, which is equivalent to approximately 60,000 liters, which was exported to England and Scotland. By 1852, Hampden was bought by George MacFarquhar Lawson. 1875, 23 years later, George died. His nephew, Dermot Owen Kelly Lawson, inherited Hampden. And I want you to remember that name, Dermot Owen Kelly Lawson. 2002, financial difficulties forced the family, the current owners back then, to sell to SCJ Jamaica Limited. And by 2003, the sugar estate closed, leaving only the distillery. So the distillery was always operational. From 1753 until today, we've never stopped making rum.
Oh, can you go back for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to point out as well that the Dermot Owen Kelly Lawson, that is that bottommost marked picture. That's actually his grave site at Hampden, and when I noticed it, like my jaw dropped open. So, and yes, we'll come back to that later. So keep going.
Present day, 2009, Everglades Farm Limited, owned by the Hussey family, acquires Hampden Estate. Hampden's process was well preserved and continues to be maintained. Hampden continues honoring the relationships with bulk rum buyers that the Husseys inherited. Continuing in 2009, the Husseys began barreling rum. First time ever in the history of Hampden, rum went into a barrel to age here. 2010, our flagship rum, Rum Fire, was bottled, created waves all over, and coming up to 2018, Hampden began the partnership with La Maison and Valère as international distributors. Same year of 2018, we launched Hampden Estate aged rum, in UK and Europe. The following year, 2019, we launched Hampden Estate aged rum in the US, which did quite well, I must say. And continuing on, we will now get to the five pillars of Hampden rum, which is spring water, Hampden spring water, solely pot stills, wild fermentation, tropical aging only, sugar free, and natural colors. Now, when you guys get here, you'll get to take a walk through that lovely gate and into Hampden Distillery. Hampden's water source. Hampden's water supply is from a spring and a dam, which is 2.5 miles away from the distillery. Constructed in 1760, the water is piped to the distillery. So from the 1700, the water is gravity fed to the distillery, and it still is today. The water is integral to Hampden rum making process. Along the line, I'll let you know that we sit on the largest aquifer in the island, and beneath us 20 feet, if we dig a hole 20 feet here at Hampden, we're hitting fresh water. So, and that water is part of the cockpit country as well, leading from the cockpit country. Hampden rum would not be the same without this water. It would be different if we were to use NWC water, which is the regulated National Water Commission, has chlorine and such in it. We do not use that here. As a matter of fact, we do not have that nowhere on Hampden's estate. Nowhere in Hampden property do we use chlorinated water. Right?
Okay, so we've gone through the history. So now let's get into the meat of the matter, how Hampden rum is made. So we start with our molasses. All the molasses sugars to be above 52%. Fermentable sugars, that is. So that's the sugar that's going to be converted from sugar into alcohol. For our process, we do not pasteurize or clarify molasses before using it in the wash mixing. We grow our own sugar cane on the estate. The cane is milled right here on site and is sent into our aging or cane juice acid tank, where it is allowed to ferment until it becomes acidified, and we call that cane acid, which is really acetic acid, but just from the cane juice. This acetic acid is mixed in our wash when we are mixing wash, so it's a part of our wash mixture, but we'll get to that as we move on.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're not fermenting just a fresh cut cane juice. You're making cane juice and you're using that to make acid first, correct?
Yes. So we don't ferment cane juice for the sugars.
Right.
We ferment cane juice to make acid to add to our wash.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're not making rum agricole.
No agricole.
I just want to clarify that. Okay, good.
Sure, no problem. All right, so the wash here at Hampden is composed of a few things. So as Pepe alluded to before, it's exclusively dam water that is used here as a part of the wash. Whereas we have a well on site, the well is used for domestic purposes, but for the mixing of the wash, we use exclusively dam water, molasses, dunder or vinasse as some people refer to it, and cane acid, which is the fermented cane juice that I just spoke about. When we combine all these components, we call it heavy wash. And heavy wash is pumped into our cedar fermenters. And this is where primary fermentation takes place.
So what we're seeing there is the mixing of the wash. That's not where the actual fermentation is, right?
No. Okay, so this picture to the right of your screen now, we call this the wash mixing cistern. This is where all the components are added and they're mixed.
Yeah, they're set down into the ground.
Down into the ground, yes. And from here, it is pumped into the cedar vats.
Okay.
So dunder. We made mention of dunder or vinasse as some people know it, but let us get a bit into what dunder is. Dunder is that liquid which remains in the pot's kettle after the distillation run. Distillers in some other places call it stillage or vinasse. Most Jamaican distilleries, most other distilleries outside of Hampden, dispose of their dunder at the end of each cycle or at the end of each distillation run. And they dispose of that mostly by spreading it on the cane field because it is a good fertilizer. But here at Hampden, the majority of the dunder that we produce is reused in the wash mixing process. The dunder, after it leaves the distillation kettle, is stored in wooden vats or fermenters again, similar to the fermentation fermenters, and it is reused again in the wash when we are mixing. The adding of stillage to wash isn't unique to rum. There are also some bourbon producers who do this as well, and in that case, it is called sour mash. So these are a few pictures of our fermenting house. And you heard me mention the cedar vats. You can see them on those pictures there. So they are small. It would be a bit different from what you would be used to at other distilleries where the fermenters are larger. But we have a lot of small cedar wooden vats that we put our wash into ferment.
And how many vats in
And
total do you have?
Go ahead, Matt.
I was sorry, how many vats do you have going at any one time?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure this number will surprise a lot of people. As it is now, we have 85 wooden vats. 85 wooden vats.
That's
Yes.
a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, part of it is like you have such long fermentations. You have to keep putting into the system, so you need all those.
Yes. So because of the length of the fermentation time, we need to have a lot of wiggle room so that we have enough space to store the wash as it is mixed. So it's kind of on a staggered basis. So when we will use the earlier ones are mixed and then we keep refilling over time.
Right.
And back to that slide for a bit before we move on to the previous slide. You will note it says fermentation here as well. There is no added yeast. So we will get into it a bit further down that our fermentation takes longer than you would expect. But that is what happens when all our fermentation is well. So we add no yeast, so it's all natural fermentation. Next slide. All right, so Hampden fermentation takes about 8 to 15 days in total. And this covers primary and secondary fermentation. The cedar vats are open here, so they are not covered, so they are all open. In our fermenting house, we have wooden floors with very tiny walkways. Matt will be able to tell you because he's been here. It's really compact and nice. It's just a nice environment to be in. Wild yeast lives and reproduces in the various rooms in the fermenting house. Once alcoholic fermentation is completed, which is the first part of the fermentation, the dead wash remains in the vats for up to another 2 weeks. Muck is added at the end of primary fermentation, and this introduces bacteria into the system, which causes the development of the heavier esters, which Hampden is known for. The muck process helps to develop the esters for the different malts. So our heavier rums with the higher esters, the adding of the muck increases that, and it also increases the bouquet of Hampden rum. So I mentioned muck just now, and I'm sure a lot of antennas went up. So what exactly is muck? Muck is an integral part of the wash here at Hampden. The muck is stored in the muck pit, which is below ground in the fermentation house. So if you can see that picture to the right, there is that railed area between the two sets of fermenters. That is where our muck pit is. So the muck contains the thick matter deposited from the dunder and the fermenter bottoms at the end of each production year. So the fermenter bottoms are cleaned out and then they are stored away for a period of time in what we call graves. And at the end of 7 years, we reap those graves and then re-add it to the muck pit. So muck consists to a large extent of dead yeast and therefore it is full of nitrogen. Muck also has a high bacterial load. Many bacterial varieties produce different flavor compounds as products of their metabolism. Among the products of the metabolism are heavier acids. Now, these acids will combine with the alcohol made in fermentation, and they combine to form heavier esters. Now, the heavier esters don't necessarily give you the same sweet aroma that you get from ethyl acetate, but they are heavy flavor compounds which give similar smells to banana or pineapple, and this gives the complex bouquet that is characteristics of Hampden rum.
And I just want to interrupt really quick, Kenroy, just to sort of reiterate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what this is there's a normal fermentation like you would see at most distilleries that last a week or so. And then instead of immediately distilling that, you actually leave it, then you add the muck in, and that muck sort of induces a second bacterial fermentation that creates yet more flavor. So you could make rum without muck, you could make it with muck, but the muck is sort of like when you want to supercharge it, you add that towards the end of the fermentation process.
Exactly. So at the end of the initial fermentation, where most distilleries would distill their alcohol.
Right.
Add the muck at that point and then leave it for the secondary fermentation to take place.
So is the muck in there the entire secondary fermentation, or just like a few days at the end?
A few days at the end before distillation happens.
Okay. And I think it's important to note that there are a few other distilleries that use things like muck, but muck is one of those things that's also unique to every distillery. That
on your location.
Like you have your natural yeast. It's the same with muck. Each distillery's muck is going to be different as well. So that's how you get these different flavors from different distilleries.
Exactly. Yeah. So also the muck here at Hampden would not be comparable to the muck at another distillery.
Correct.
Because of the differences in environment.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. All right, so after fermentation, the next step is distillation. Now, distillation, this is the process where the alcohol that is made during fermentation is driven out of the mixture and is collected as rum. So at Hampden Distillery, at Hampden Estate, all distillation takes place in double retorts copper pot stills. Each distillation cycle, so and for pot still distillation, it is batch distillation. So it's done in batches, start to end, then you empty the vessels and start again. So each cycle takes about 7 hours to complete. And that 7 hours covers time from which the wash is pumped into the kettle and the retorts are loaded with the low and the high wine. So from that point until the end of the cycle, it's about 7 hours. The low and high wines produced and collected during each cycle are reused for charging the retorts for the next cycle. Most of the dunder or vinous discharge from the pot at the end of the cycle is collected and reused in washing stage. We mentioned this before. The lees left in the retorts at the end of the cycle also, we collect those and we use them into the cousins process. So we use those lees and combine with hydrated lime to form salts, which we will reuse in the cousins process. And now the cousins process, for those of us who are familiar with rum, is a chemical reaction in which we are able to make supercharged esters. Now, if you notice here, we are able to get esters of up to 5,000 grams per 100 LAA.
So is it safe to say that the core of the cousin process is essentially throwing together a lot of alcohol and a lot of acids all in a very small space, and so you just get a supercharge of ester production?
Yeah, exactly. Because once the alcohol and the acids are in the same environment, they will react to form esters. Right. Yes. Right,
and it's actually unlike the esters that are created during fermentation. These esters are created like during the distillation process, correct? Like it's where everything comes together. Yeah.
Yeah, because the heat acts as a catalyst in this reaction. So during the distillation process, these are created.
Yeah. There is a paper out there. If you look hard enough, there's a paper that describes the cousin process, written by H.H. Cousins himself. So.
Yes. Here at Hampden, we're very familiar with that paper.
So I'm sure.
Yeah. You will also notice back to the previous slide a bit, please, before we move on. Yeah, you'll also notice that we reuse a lot of what is made, what would normally be waste from the process. So you see, we reuse our dunder for the most part, and we reuse our lees. So our process makes very little waste when compared to most other processing plants, and therefore there's little environmental impact from our distillery. Next slide. Okay, so we spoke about the double retort copper pot stills, and here at Hampden we have 6 of these stills. So we have one, the oldest still, which is also the smallest, is a John Doerr, and it was installed in 1960. Now this still has a capacity of 2,000 gallons, which is about 9,000 liters. So the other 5 pot stills are 5,000 gallon stills. There is one Vendo, which was commissioned in 1994, and there are 3 foresights. One was commissioned in 2010, and the other 2, which are newest pot stills, were commissioned in 2020. And the final 5,000 gallon pot still is made from a South African company called TNT, and this was installed in 2016.
Yeah, it seems like the Hussey family's bought a lot of pot stills since buying
Yes, you can notice the difference since they took over in 2010 versus now.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. So these are just some pictures of the pot stills. You can see that the age is showing on the John Doerr still, but it is very integral to our process here. So it has been around since 1960. And this is the Vendo, which has been around since 1994. This picture now shows the original foresights. So that was in 2010. And this now is the TNT. This is a picture from when it was being put in. You can see the scaffolding and whatever is still there.
Yeah, and they all kind of look very similar. I think they're all, your intent was to make them as similar as possible to make the rum consistent. Yes.
Yes. So for the untrained eye, when you come into our distillery, you won't really be able to tell the difference between the pot stills because they're all set up in this similar way. Yeah. Okay, so at Hampden we have 8 marks. So we will start at the lowest. So at the lowest mark, we have OWH, which is between 40 and 80 esters. And this is a very light rum, described as common clean.
And I just want to jump in really quick and say 40 to 80 esters is still fairly flavorful compared to, say, like a Cuban rum or a light column distilled rum. 40 is still quite a bit of esters compared to most other rums.
Yeah, but based on our process, it's on the very, very light end. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's plenty of flavor in that rum.
Yeah. Okay, so just a step above OWH is the LFCH, and that is 85 to 120 esters. A point of note, these 2 marks were developed since the Hussey family took over Hampden. If you notice the names, so OWH is Outram Wormhold Hussey, and LFCH is Lawrence Francis Close Hussey. So these are our 2 newest marks. So for the other marks, increasing in ester concentration, we have LROK, which is 250 to 350 esters. Then we have HLCF, which is 500 to 700. Diamond H, which is 900 to 1,000. HGML, which is 1,000 to 1,100. C Diamond H, which is 1,300 to 1,400. And the DOK, which is 1,500 to 1,600. Now, as Pepe alluded to before, this is where, and Matt also said it, this is where we are legally allowed to stop. But those of us here at Hampden know that we make esters far in excess of this, but the laws of the country only allow us to stop here at 1,600. All right, so after distillation, the next step now is the lab and organoleptic analysis.
Where we're at right now.
Yeah, so for those of us who can see my background, we are currently sitting in the lab. So this is one of our 2 labs. This is the analytical lab where organoleptic analysis and GC analysis are done. We also have another lab here at Hampden, which is the wet chemistry lab. This is the more traditional laboratory where wet chem methods are used to test both raw materials and rum samples at the end of each run. Now, once the rum is produced and once it comes through the lab and the quality team approves the rum, it is sent on to the next step, which is storage and blending. Blending is done on site. So all blending is done here. And the resultant blend is either sent to bottling, shipped as bulk in ISO tanks, or placed in oak barrels for storage in our aging warehouses. Now, most of the rum made here at Hampden is shipped in bulk to our customers in Europe. Bottling is done in a small bottling plant at site here at Hampden Estate. It's not a year-round operation, as currently we bottle less than 10% of our product. And as we speak, a new bottling plant is being constructed, so we expect our bottling demand to increase over time. Now, what isn't shipped as bulk or placed or sent to bottling is placed in barrels. So the rum is blended into one of the 8 mars that we discussed earlier, and it is placed in these barrels and sent to our aging warehouse to be stored. Okay, so on this slide, you will see a picture of some of our barrels. So we here at Hampden use ex-bourbon barrels. They are 200 liters for the most part, and these are stored in our warehouse. So for Hampden rum to be 100% authentic Hampden Estate rum, it must be in Jamaica. So even when we do sell bulk rum to Europe and they age it there, it cannot be classified as 100% authentic Hampden Estate rum because it has not been aged in Jamaica. As I mentioned, we age our rum in 200-liter ex-bourbon casks, but as it is now, we have some other casks which we are using as kind of an experimental process to see how finishing in other casks will help in our age rum products. We currently have approximately 2,400 casks aging, and the forecast for the next few years you will see here are on the slide. So by the end of 2021, we expect to have about 2,700, and by 2030, we expect to have about 8,000 barrels of aged rum. The typical angel share here at Hampden, we've noticed, is about 6 to 7% per annum. And due to that evaporation loss, if you would call it that, Jamaican excise law requires that every 3 years, rums of similar age and mark are what's the word, combined in barrels to ensure that there's not too much space left in the barrels. Because you know the marrying of the interaction between the rum and the barrels happens best when there is not too much head space. So you need a lot of alcohol to barrel interaction. Okay, so here are a few pictures of our aging warehouse. This is one picture from outside, and the lower picture is showing us how the barrels are stacked. So some distilleries will use racks, but here at Hampden we find that storing barrels on pallets is much easier in terms of movement and relocation over time. So the capacity of the current aging warehouse is 5,000 barrels. So there are plans in place to build additional warehouses. So in summary now, let us go over the steps of the process here at Hampden. So the process starts with wash mixing. So the wash is mixed. Then this wash is sent to the fermenters and allowed to ferment. And in the case where we need them to age, we allow the wash to age. Now the wash at the end of the fermentation process is called dead wash. So dead wash is distilled, and we know using copper pot stills, we distill those in batch distillation to produce rum. At the end of distillation, the rum undergoes quality and organoleptic analysis. Then the next step is blending. And from blending, we either send out as bulk, send to bottling, or send to the aging warehouses. So again, at Hampden, everything is natural, no additives. So Hampden rum is sugar-free, natural color, no additives. Hampden's pure single rums are produced, aged, and bottled without any additives. There is no added sugar, no added tannins, no added glycerin, no added caramel. There is nothing artificial. And our motto is a great rum does not need cosmetic improvements. So some environmental initiatives we currently have here at Hampden. So we are in the process of commissioning a microturbine for clean power generation. So we are trying to get away from the use of fuels, which we know burn to give off harmful gases for the environment. So we are commissioning a microturbine for clean power generation. Our boiler here at the plant has been converted from burning heavy fuel oil, and we now use liquefied natural gas as fuel. Electric cogeneration is also one of our projects. So we are using electrical cogeneration from renewable fuels. We have water conservation initiatives. We are in the process of implementing stormwater management systems. So all our drainways and tunnels, then we are in the process of paving those and collecting all of the stormwater here. We have mitigated airborne pollutants, including the conversion of the boiler. And we are also in the process of harnessing CO2 for reuse.
So, Rum Fire, the beginning of Hampden's new era. We were here together, and basically, the directors, the Huzzy family, just basically said, let's put that juice in a bottle. Rum Fire was first bottled in January 2010. It has become a bartender's must-have, and that's all over the world. It's available in Europe, the US, and of course, Jamaica. How many esters does it take till you get to Rum Fire? 450 esters, which is the main reason why bartenders love it. And I must say, not only bartenders, myself. I'm quite sure you love it as well, Matt.
I do. I have 5 bottles here.
5 bottles, okay. Way to go, way to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's this is the photo is showing one of the branded bars that we have on the way to Hampden Estate. It's part of the tradition here that you basically brand your location, you brand where the rum sells most, right? So we hopefully, I don't know, I'll have to talk to Christelle and see how we'll get to branding a few bars in the States and Europe, yeah.
Quick question. I know other people have asked me this, and I don't know. Is Rum Fire, is it a single mark or is it a blend of different marks?
No, well, it is, Rum Fire would fall into our HLCF mark. So it's in that range. Yeah. So Rum Fire is about 450 esters. So we definitively blend it as HLCF and then it goes as Rum Fire.
Okay. So it's
a single mark.
So it is basically just HLCF mark rum.
Yes. Correct.
Okay. Cool. Question answered. Keep going.
Hampden Estate aged on the estate. What we have is a 46% alcohol on the left, and we have a 60% alcohol aged rum on the right. 2 beautiful rums, multi-award winning. I'm sure you guys who have tasted it, could attest to that, right? You want to interject there, Christelle?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say one of the reasons I would say Hampden Estate, aged on estate, it's not that other aged Hampden rums, if it's not aged on the estate, it's not that it's not Hampden. It's just a matter of what it can be called. So when we spoke about, or when Kenroy and Peppie spoke earlier about, in order for it to be authentic Hampden Estate rum, we're really talking about the brand. So once a Hampden is born and distilled in Jamaica, it's still gonna be Hampden rum. But once it leaves the distillery, we don't have any control over what happens to it. So in order, you understand? So I'm asking the audience if they understand. I can't hear you. That was a rhetorical question. But I just wanted to make that clarification, that, or make that distinction as to why we say authentic Hampden Estate rum, because really once it leaves, we don't have any control over what happens to it. So once you see a Hampden Estate branded bottle, that's our stamp of approval and our stamp of authenticity, really. And all the product that's being aged on estate has been earmarked for our personal releases. So that's, going into, well, it's another step into the right direction for our new era of rum that Rum Fire started. You can continue, Peppie. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So once again, two beautiful rums. When it comes on to both the aroma and taste, out of this world, and it's basically typical Hampden. Um, as Crystal mentioned, it's a step into our new era of Hampden rums coming from Hampden, which you guys can always come here and taste firsthand. Um, and we do have other releases that's coming up for you guys. Christelle, I'm quite sure it's the first you'll be seeing this.
That is the first time I'm seeing that. Okay, so thanks for the surprise.
Just bottled 2 days ago, right?
Very, yeah, I know I've been getting quite a few questions from rum lovers, rum geeks, my favorite people, as to when to expect Distillery Edition 2021. And there you have it.
Yes, yes. And to continue on the distillery editions, we have the 2019, which was the first aged rum created here at Hampden, exclusively for Hampden Estate. The demand, however, for it was so great internationally that we shared the allocation with Hampden's international distribution partners, which is La Maison and Valère. We have an annual limited edition release. And as I just showed you, the new 2021 release. And I must tell you guys, following in the footsteps of traditional Hampden rum, you got to taste it. Okay. So you guys are privileged. You're the first to see this, right? You're one of the privileged ones.
So also be the first one to taste.
I'm jealous.
Can you tell us a little bit about it, like what the strength or how long or like what are like our Reader's Tobacco label or something? We want to know more about it.
So I think so the first two editions were bottled at 59%. And Kenroy, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the 2021 was bottled at 55, correct?
55, yes, that's correct.
Right. And if you want to talk about what the difference is, and I think 2019 is sold out internationally. I don't think you can get it anywhere. We do have some left in Jamaica for our allocation, however, but you have to come to the tour and visit Peppie in order to get it. Yes. So our tourism resilient corridor is practically less than 1% COVID cases. So I come to Jamaica, I'm gonna make you feel all right. I'm just kidding. So 2019 is sold out worldwide, but 2020 is still available. Kenroy, help us understand. I think you probably be the best person. What the difference is between the 2019, the 2020, and the 2021, and what is the common thread?
Okay, so without going into too much detail, 2019 was the flagship of the Great House Edition, right? So 2019 was a small amount, so it was basically a trial run, if you want to call it that. So in 2020, okay. So first of all, it is a blended product. So the barrels were aged in marks, as I mentioned before, and then after the aging, they were blended. So it's two different marks that is blended into each of these. So one of the major differences between each release is that the year when the rum initially went into the barrels is going to be different. So the final blend is going to come out at the same age because each year is increasing in time, but the year when the rum went into the barrel is different. So for the 2021, we have a blend of 2011 rum and a 2017 rum making this up.
Okay. Yeah. And do you share any information on ester levels or anything like that?
Okay, so as I mentioned, it's two different blends. So the resultant ester level is going to be about 400.
Okay. So basically, it's the same blend,
rums,
but just a different vintage.
That's a different vintage, yeah.
Well, I'm very jealous that you get to taste the 2021 here today on Thursday afternoon at not even 3 o'clock. But has to enjoy it for the rest of us.
That is why you should visit us at the Distillery.
I was just about to say, we will try to sync up something for you. Matt, I think you will have to come back.
I want. How has it been 5 years? Yes, go on.
Well, as Christelle said, we're in the resilient corridor, so we're not really affected that much at all, with COVID. And I must say that here at the distillery, for the guys here who are drinking rum, we don't have to really worry about it, overproof stuff, Hampden rum.
Oh, Peppie, no, we always have to be very responsible. Oh, you're saying that you bathe in overproof rum, is it?
That's what we do to remain COVID free. You should try it, Matt, and your audience.
I know,
but it has to be Hampden rum. I must say, I don't know about anything else.
Yes, I'll brush my teeth with it.
It's actually not a bad idea. So you can follow us online if you don't already. Chances are, if you're tuned in here on this Thursday afternoon chat, you probably do follow us online already. But we have a pretty nifty website as well that really gives you a nice visual feel of what to expect at Hampden, and what gives you a nice look and feel of what Hampden is, as well as goes over some of the technical aspects of our production and some of the historical tidbits that we shared with you today, and some more. So you can visit us at HampdenEstateRum.com, and also follow us on Facebook and on Instagram at Hampden Estate Rum, and also Rum Fire Jamaica. I think, Matt, you probably want to take us into some Q&A.
Yes, we do. We have 20 questions now, and I just previewed some of them. Just are not good ones to ask necessarily, but I'm going to go through them in order, or in priority order, what people have voted for. So if you haven't voted yet on upvoted questions, if you want to make sure it gets answered quicker, go upvote it. So first question, I assume for Kenroy, what quality checks are done on the muck pits? Like how do you maintain the muck pits? How do you keep them healthy and with the bacteria that you want?
Okay, so the bacterial makeup of the muck pit is not really controlled so much by us. So if our process historically has basically been the same. So once we don't change anything, the bacterial load should be more or less the same. So a part of the magic behind Hampden rum also is that you don't really control what happens? You allow nature to take its course.
Okay.
So once we keep the process the same, and we keep on doing the same thing, so we use the same fermenter bottoms at the end of the rum crop and continue to bury stuff in the grave and replenish the muck pit, the bacterial activity should be the same. So we don't want to get too into the process and try to add too much of a human effect to it that we end up changing things.
Yeah. Don't mess with something that works.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I know I've gotten this question a lot because I've written about muck. Is the distinction, like people think muck pits, but then they see these outside pictures of like, which I believe are muck graves. So there's like the muck pit, which is actually in the distillery by the fermentation area. That's separate from where you put it out. There's stuff put outside in the ground. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference there?
Okay, so what comes from the graves replenishes the muck pit.
Okay.
So it's basically a cycle. So at the end of the production year, we clean all the fermenters that I told you about. So the bottoms, so whatever mud and dead yeast and whatever residue is left in the bottom of the fermenters at the end of the year, that is cleaned out and that goes to the graves where they are buried for 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
So they are covered. We keep adding dunder to them to prevent them from drying out over that time.
Okay.
So they are buried outside, and then when the graves now are reaped, that is used to replenish the muck pit for the next year.
Right. So it's sort of like cold. Think of it as cold storage, not cold, but like long-term storage.
Long-term storage.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Great. Next question, one I'm going to take and ask or answer is why is the 1600 ester level? Why is the maximum 1600 esters? I've actually researched this quite a bit. The short version is that back in the 1930s, when the Jamaican spirits pool was basically trying to save the Jamaican rum industry because there was prices had been depressed. Only a few distilleries like Hampden could make this high ester rum, and they were essentially trying to ensure that enough distilleries could continue to make rum and sell rum. If they let it go up, it'd be like to say whatever it wanted. Then only a couple of distilleries that could make super high rum could sell rum. And so it was sort of an attempt to, in one aspect, to make sure that more Jamaican distilleries, could continue to operate. So, and there's a lot more to the story, which we won't go into here. Next question. It says ester levels are marks. Are they pre-maturation stage? Basically, I think what the question is asking is when we say this level of this rum is this mark and has this ester level, is that counted? Is that determined at distillation, or is that determined after aging for 5 or 10 years? Like which is it?
It's at distillation. Well, to be more accurate at blending, because sometimes you will have to blend to get the rum within the parameters to meet a certain mark. So that is where it is determined. So they are pre-blended and then sent to age. So the marks are developed at the distillation or the blending point, and then they are placed to age.
Right.
So the aging has nothing to do with the mark per se.
Right. So just to give an example, so if let's imagine you said this rum is L Rock rum, LROK, and it's a 400 or whatever that number is. That 400 is measured after distillation. It's aging is just, after aging, the ester levels could be whatever, but the rum is still the mark and the ester level at what it was distilled at.
Yes, what it was distilled at.
Okay.
And we find that the ester levels don't change drastically during the aging process, so it would still most likely fall within the range.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Another question. I've sort of been curious as well. How much of the DOC, the DOK, the high ester rum, highest one you make, how much of it is, and if you can share this, and maybe you can't, like roughly how much of it is what you sell to say the European blenders versus how much do you use yourself in your own rums for your own brands?
Well, the majority of the DOK is sold to the European market.
Okay.
Remember, I said the rum fire is just at less than 10% of our production. So at that level esters, it would need a lot to
Okay.
do enough grams.
So you don't have warehouses full of DOK rum that you're going to age and sell. I think a lot of people would love that.
Not yet. Not yet.
No, not yet, as
Yeah.
Peppie said.
Yes.
No, and I think a little bit further to that question, though, further in answer to that question, I think there's a perception that we would know what happens to the rum once it leaves us. We don't know what happens to it, so we don't know how much of it goes into the food industry, into the perfume industry, into blending other rums.
Tobacco.
Once it's a bulk industry, I mean, our knowledge of what happens to the liquid after that ends. Hence our inability to guarantee anything about it after the fact.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned food. Like I know, it's sometimes it appears in ice cream. Like
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Both locally and internationally. Well, so I've heard.
Yeah. No. In fact,
I know the local brands that use us because I have personal relationships with those manufacturers, but I can only make an assumption for the international one.
Yeah.
Same with perfume.
Yeah, no, and I was in Grenada earlier this year, and I had bought some ice cream, and I was eating it, and I was like, "That's Hampden Estate." I'm tasting. I knew it. I just knew that it was that aroma. I knew it. Okay. Next question from Vaughn. It says, all the fermentation vats, are they made of cedar, and roughly how old are they?
Not necessarily all, but the majority of the fermentation vats we have here are made of cedar, and some are quite old because I have been here for, well, let me not age myself. I've been here for a while.
Kenroy, you look like 5.
Exactly.
It's okay if you age yourself. You literally look like you're underage.
Yeah, so I've been here for a while and I have not seen some of them changed. But the interesting thing is that we change them. Well, changing in place sounds strange, but we build them back into the same positions. So when one goes bad, we will just remove it and rebuild it right there.
Okay. You repair them. You don't just bring brand new ones in.
Well, it's not about repairing them. We will disassemble the one that's bad and just rebuild a new one in its place.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of them are quite old, but we do change them sometimes.
Right. Okay.
When it's replaced, it's replaced with local cedar.
Okay.
Right? We don't use cedar that's brought into the country. It has to be local cedar.
Okay. Related question: are the vats lined with pitch?
No.
Okay.
There's a traditional method here, which we inherited, where we call the cool pots that we have here have the ability of making the vats and sealing them so that they don't leak when you put liquid into it.
Okay.
So there's no lining.
Right, and sealing it naturally. We don't use silicone or any such thing to seal these pots.
That would defeat the purpose of it.
Right, exactly.
Right. So, and I don't expect you'll tell us exactly which ones, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. Is do all of the marks use the Cousins process, or only a few of them?
Not all of them. Those on the higher end we use the Cousins process, but some we don't use it at all.
Okay.
Some of the esters will develop just naturally during fermentation.
Right. Okay. Related question to marks. Do you dedicate any specific stills to making specific marks, like the John Doerr makes the Ale Rock or anything like that, or is it like any still can make any mark?
Okay, so no, not for the marks per se, but for the Cousins, the rum that the high ester rum we make from the Cousins process is only done in the John Doerr still. Okay,
so the John Doerr, so that old still is the only one where you're doing the Cousins process and recharging the retorts with the salts and stuff. Okay, good to know. So we talked about the Great House release, which is good. A very geeky question from Adam Chapman down in Australia. I know he teaches WSET level 3. He and I chat a lot. He wants to know, what is the level of acetic acid in the cane vinegar?
Okay, so the longer the cane vinegar ages, the greater the acetic acid level. So at the highest point I've seen, it's 5 grams per liter of acid in a sample of cane vinegar.
Okay. So how is that like? Is that like? Can you say like more or less than sort of like table vinegar? Like cooking. Like is it about the same or more or less or?
To be fair, I'm really not sure.
Okay. But 5 grams per liter is what is the high point.
Yes.
Okay.
But that could also change if it is allowed to age for a longer period of time.
It can go higher.
Right.
It can go higher.
Right. So here's an interesting question. I wondered this as well. I'll just read the question and I'll put my commentary. It says, beyond isoamylacetate, what are the next most common esters within the Hampden marks? And he mentioned isoamylacetate. My guess would be that the second, besides ethyl acetate, your second highest ester would be ethyl butyrate. Can you tell? Okay, so it's ethyl butyrate. So it's ethyl acetate, which is always number 1, ethyl butyrate, and then isoamylacetate, which is sort of the banana, like what we would call like fake banana flavor. It's actually the real banana flavor. Are there any other esters or other volatile compounds that are particularly represent Hampden? Like Hampden has a lot of these relative to other rums. Anything you can share on that front?
Okay, so from our GC traces, we noticed that there's a lot of ethyl decanoate and ethyl octanoate, which would come up prominently in our traces. There are also other flavor notes that we get from organoleptic analysis, which our GC doesn't necessarily pick up. But there are also other very fruit like jackfruit. I'm not sure if our viewers are familiar with the jackfruit smell, but we find that there's a lot of jackfruit smell in our rums. But our GC doesn't necessarily pick up that ester, so we're not quite sure what exactly that ester is.
And I'm very sensitive to that particular ester. Like I pick it up in a lot of rums and Hampden, of course. Thank you. From the rums that you sell in Jamaica, I assume Rum Fire is the most popular, but is there anything else you sell that's in Jamaica? Like, is the Great House selling, or do you sell the Hampden? Like what's that look like? That may be a question for Christelle.
Yeah, Rum Fire is definitely the most popular. For a few different reasons, but one of them is price point. The aged rums is just, secondary price point, but I think the lack of value for what Hampden Estate is just the lack of knowledge about what anything other than Appleton is. And I don't mean to speak I'm not speaking negatively about Appleton. Appleton is a brand that has cemented themselves. They've spent decades and billions of dollars cementing themselves as the rum company in Jamaica. Everybody else was just making bulk rum. So it's not rocket science that when Jamaicans think about rum, that's what they're going to automatically think about, because they've been just surrounded by it growing up and throughout history. So because of that, if anybody's drinking aged rum in Jamaica, it's going to be something that is more familiar to them. There is a very small growing community of rum lovers like this audience here in Jamaica, those would be people that travel more, that really are very much in tune with the whiskey world. And in being whiskey lovers, they have learned that the Hampdens of the world and the Worthy Parks of the world, and the Money Musts of the world, even though that's not solely pot still, are things that they should be turning themselves on to. So there is a small growing community of that in Jamaica, but it's few and far between. So definitely rum fire is our most popular product, and I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. Um, I know that we do quite well with our sales from the gift shop at the estate with all of our rums, but Peppy, you can definitely speak more to that than I could.
Oh yes. There's a growing audience for all the age rums that we've produced. And bear in mind that Hampden has just now, we've been in the local market for 10 years, really, right? And people, as Crystal alluded to, people are getting used to having Hampden rum, right? What you find in Jamaica is a lot of places, depending on the parish, you'll find that you'll have one particular parish or two particular parishes that love a certain rum. So here in Trelawney, where Hampden is made, you'll find people in St. Elizabeth or Westmoreland that love anything from Hampden. Okay. Um, so I would say definitely the aged products are taking off. I mean, I hardly have any left here, so you guys gotta hurry up and come to Jamaica, right? Um, and the rum fire from its inception, people loved it. So we're definitely getting to a wider audience locally
Right.
with both.
Yeah, it seems to me like from what I understand, that even across the Caribbean, sort of it's the support your local team. Like you drink the rum from your nearest distillery for the most part.
Right. So it's similar to that.
Right.
That's the reason why, depending on which parish you go, you will see the bars branded with the distillery that's closest to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So another question from Adam, which is incredibly geeky, and I can almost comprehend it, but I'm going to say ask her a much simplified version of it. He wants to know about. He's very curious about the cane acid portion of the wash. Is it a relatively small percentage, or is it half the wash? Like roughly how much cane acid is in the wash?
So it's anywhere between, depending on what we expect depending on what we want the overall outcome to be.
Right. What mark you're making, yeah.
Yeah. So it can range from as low as 5% to 20.
Okay.
So on the lower end, because remember the cane acid will react with the alcohol in the fermenter,
right,
and make esters. So on the lower end we would add around 5%, and on the higher end we'd go up to 20, 25.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's just as a historical note, it's surprising when you look at the old wash recipes. People think it's that rum is made from molasses, and it was actually molasses was one of the least used ingredient, like by percentage. That dunder was a big chunk of it, and like the cane acid is a big portion of it. The actual molasses is fairly small in the overall mix. Okay. Okay. Siobhan asked about your organoleptic process. So, do you have a formal panel, like a tasting panel, like a group of people who taste the rums and evaluate the rums like every day or every week to make sure things haven't changed? Do you have anything like that?
Well, we try to do it per batch. It sometimes gets a lot much because it's a small distillery, and as I said, we have 6 pot stills, so we try to do it daily. So based on the conditions here, things won't go off very far in a day's production. So we try to do an organoleptic analysis of all the rum that is made on a particular day before we make any decisions as to what to do.
Okay. Next question, and I'll again add some commentary. It says, how many times do you reuse a cask, and do you char them again? And my thought is, like, you've only been aging for about 10 years. You may not even gotten to the point of needing to reuse a cask, or maybe you have. But kind of a barrel management question.
Yeah. So the practice here is to use the casks two times. So
Okay.
if I don't know if we would have noticed some of the casks in the pictures that we showed had the top was painted in white. So we generally use that as a marker. So at the second use, we paint it in white, so we know that it has already been used once, and this is the second use, so we know not to use it again.
Okay. I'll bet that if you had a dock and cask, you could sell those staves and make some money.
Probably.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Question. So are the marks named after the greats who have gone before? Like, I think people are curious about these names. Like we say, like, Dermot Owen Kelly or Altram, Altram Hussey. Tell how who makes up these names and who decides, and what are their criteria?
I'm thinking Christelle is the best suited person to answer this question.
She's muted.
I was wondering if they were frozen or if they were waiting on me, and then I was muted again. So, well, obviously, we have only named the two that we created. So we created LFCH and OWH. LFCH was named after my grandfather. He was still alive at the time when that, I believe he was still alive at the time when the decision was made to create that mark. Yeah, he was. So that was, yeah, of course, it was quite something for it to be named after him. And the OWH was after his grandfather. Yeah, after his grandfather. He also has a half brother whose name is Utram Hosey. So it is named after those who have gone before us, very much so. And we named those two after those two because we wanted to follow in the footsteps of obviously what had been done previously. Not with all of the marks, evidently, because some of them speak to, as you would have seen in that side, some of the acronyms speak to characteristics of the mark as opposed to a person. But obviously the most famous one is what has become known as DOC, which is DOK for Dermot Owen Kelly. So I quite like that, because unlike other distilleries where I see they create the acronyms based on the characteristic of the liquid of the mark, we pay homage to those who have gone before us in the process. So I quite like that.
Right. And it is one of those things for the Jamaican geeks who know about marks is these names we talked about, Dermot Owen Kelly or the Altram Hussies. In the trade, those names did not appear. Like in the trade, it was just like these are the 3 letters or 4 letters or 2 letters over, and it's become this sort of guessing game of people trying to figure out, like, what did this, what was STCE, what mark was that? It's sort of people like me and Luca have made spend quite a bit of time just tracking down what all these things meant.
Peppie, are you giving us a tour?
Peppie, you're outside.
Peppie looks like he's going somewhere exciting and he wants.
He's going to take us to the graveyard.
Maybe we can just do another question until he gets.
Yeah, well, okay. So the question is, are you still connected? So I think the question is, are you still connected to the Long Pond Distillery? And my understanding is you have the Long Pond Sugar Estate, that the Hussey family owns the Long Pond Sugar Estate, but not the distillery. Can you clarify on that?
Yeah, there was just a geographical connection in that we shared a wall, or we shared the same gate. So the Long Pond Distillery is a completely different entity to anything that we own. What we do own is a Long Pond Sugar Factory. The sugar factory is no longer in operation, And until you come here and you really understand the geography, you wouldn't necessarily know this. But the Long Pond Sugar Estate and the Hampden Distillery are about 45 minutes to drive away from each other. So they're definitely separate estates. It's just that we happen to acquire them both as a part of the same divestment process. But so in short, no, we're not affiliated with the Long Pond Distillery, but we do share some of the same lands.
Right. So it looks like Peppie wants to show us something. Let's try that.
Does, but I think he has a bad oh, there we go. Yeah.
Peppie, can you unmute? Can you hear us and unmute us? Seems like
Is
it doesn't
that
have.
Trelawney Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, Peppie, if you can hear us, jump in whenever you can, whenever we can, you can see us. Next question is, are you now working on a full range of yearly releases of the different marks with Velier or by yourself? Like I think people would be love you to like do sort of what you've done with it, like every mark every year, just make something available. Is there any thought to something like this? And you're muted, by the way. Christelle, you're muted.
Could you repeat the question, Matt? I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, it was so the Christelle can nod if you can hear me.
Sorry. What was that?
Yeah. Okay. So a question for you is basically all of the different Hampden marks on a yearly release. Like I think people would love to see, 2012 OWH, 2013 OWH, 2014 LROK. Is there any sort of thought of doing these sort of like very specialized releases on an ongoing basis?
We'd like to, but right now we're building up our stocks. So that's one of the issues with aging. You have to wait on time. So, and obviously we don't have any, whereas some other distilleries, they can, pop in some columns still to stretch. We don't have that luxury. Well, it's not really a luxury in our case, but it's not something that we would practice. So we're really, the demand for our products has been astounding, thanks to our rum lovers and our audience. And the demand has been, I would say, on par or slightly higher than originally projected. So we have to spend some time increasing our stocks. Would that be right, Kenroy? Although I think they're frozen a bit again.
Yeah.
But these are the things that we'd like to do because we do understand what our audience would like to see from us. So we're trying to listen. But just so you know, I don't even have one bottle of the Endemic Bird series. If anybody wants to get me something really, really nice for Christmas and wants to suck up to me for any reason at all, I'll give you free tours of the distillery. I'd be so grateful. You can just hold on to it for me and I'll come and visit and pick it up.
Yeah, no, and I have noticed people will say like, oh, I saw the this bird at this store and boom, like 2 hours later, they're all gone. So, so another question for you, Christelle, is so what triggered your decision or the family's decision to create Hampden's own brand? Oh, you're muted again.
I know. Sorry, I had somebody come into the office, so I was trying to multitask. But no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, what triggered the Hussey's family's decision to create a Hampden brand rather than just sort of keep doing what they've always done?
At the time, my grandfather was still alive, and it was his childhood dream to own a sugar estate. I mean, not so much a rum distillery, but sugar estate. He was a child of a farmer. He grew up actually. When he was a teenager, he was a timekeeper at Monet Musk plantation, and it was one of his dreams, and it was a dream realized. When we took over Hampden Estate, nobody knew anything about it, and obviously because it was primarily bulk. I mean, that's what Hampden did. Hampden produced bulk rum, and the idea behind Rumfire was well, if it's so good overseas, if there's such a market for it, if we're selling so much of it in bulk, somebody must be drinking it. So doesn't it make sense to put it in a bottle? Um, yeah, so we would have loved to have been able to start with an aged rum, because for us that's what we knew as very valuable. But there was no aged product on estate. So there again, he said, well, if it's selling so much in bulk, it must be good and it must be even better in a barrel. So that's when we started aging. So he, not even really knowing very much about rum, made that decision based on just kind of guessing what the consumer would want. And so we started with rum fire, as it didn't require any aging. So that was the reason why we decided to incorporate branded products into our model.
Okay, and I'll
Live.
yeah, I see Peppie, and I'll just jump in really quick, and we'll go to Peppie. I promise. It's sort of, this is what you're talking about, is a general thing we're seeing in Caribbean rum, that the move to premium, to go premium, to have distillery driven brands rather than rum, than selling bulk rum and then somebody else, blending and selling their own brands. This is really only taken hold in the last 20 or 30 years, that distilleries are moving towards their own distillery brand, which is a great thing. So yeah. I know people really want to see what Peppie's doing. So hey, Will, can you make Peppie full screen? Give me the entire screen. Peppie, tell us what we're seeing. You're muted, Peppie. I don't know if you can hear me. So yeah, there's just pot stills.
Okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so he's showing the pot still area, and that the liquid you saw, the liquid here running into that pit is the dunder being released from the kettle at the end of a cycle.
Okay.
So this is one of our pot stills. I think this is one of the 4 sides pot stills.
Okay. So is the new still, is it sort of in the same row as all the existing ones, or did you have to find new space for it?
No, we had taken out some of the older ones, so we had space to put in the new ones.
Okay. Yeah, feel free to, Kenroy, feel free to narrate. Yes, those are the retorts.
Yeah.
This is familiar. I remember this. And this is one of the original aging, this is now used for aging, if I remember correctly, or is this blending?
No, this is a part of the fermenting. This is a part of the fermenting house.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay.
If you can notice, on both sides of the corridor right there.
Okay.
And this now is the front of the distillery.
He's waving at us. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I see Peppie has a better signal now, so I think he's coming in the office. So, great. I know there's more questions here, but I know we're sort of run long already, and I think we've covered an incredible amount of ground. So I want to thank Christelle, Kenroy, and Peppie so much for sharing so much with us over this past 90 minutes. So anything you want to say before we have Will take us out?
Just thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you, Kenroy and Peppie, for being such. I want you to say your final words after. I didn't want to be the last person to talk before Will. Thank you for being so helpful in creating the presentation, and thanks to you as well, Matt. And thank you for also. Every time I talk to Kenroy, I learn something new. It's like I definitely do not feel like the smartest person in the room when I'm with you. But we really appreciate, and my mom sent me a message. She's using her iPad. So she couldn't figure out how to type into the chat box, and Mommy sent to tell you both that you were excellent, and she's so proud. So my mom and my dad are watching us. They took off from their work day to watch us, so that's quite exciting. thanks to
Yes.
everybody for your support and your encouragement in the business community, in the rum community. It's not an easy time right now, just all around. Remain resilient and keep supporting Hampden. I'll hopefully return to the circuit in 2022, a little bit here and there. And I would love to also invite at some point in time Kenroy and Peppie at different intervals to introduce them to the international markets at the same time, because I think it's important. So this is a good start, but get used to seeing them. And I will, and I had one more thing to say. Oh, if there are any questions that you guys have that didn't get answered, you can just send them to us by direct message on Instagram, and I will filter them to the right people at the distillery, even if they're and Kenroy would be happy to answer, and Peppie once they get a chance. So just send direct to Instagram, and I can always put you on to the right people. So yeah, that's it from me. You guys want to say anything?
All right. Just to say thanks for having us. Thanks for coming into the Hampden family and allowing us to explain how it is that the magic is made here. And I'm sure Pepe will want to invite you to come and experience it for yourselves.
Most definitely. Anytime you guys are coming to Jamaica, make sure you come here. We're always happy to get you guys here at Hampden to see the magic firsthand. You know, it's the best way. Right? And as Crystal and Kenroy said, thank you guys for sharing your day with us. You know, listening to us about Hampden and the magic that has been going on now for well over 16 years. Um, we hope that you guys will come through and continue to taste some good Hampden rum. So thank you for hosting us, thank you for having us, thank you for listening to us, and hope to see you here at Hampden soon.
Sure.
Yeah,
What
and
do we
thank
have coming up next, Matt?
Oh well, so actually, Will has a link ready to show you. So we're actually in Worspa. What we're doing here with Worspa, we have sort of two different tracks. One are these Rum Talk sessions, which we're going into distilleries, but also as well we're doing what we call our Icon series, which is essentially for Worspa's 50th anniversary. We are talking to icons of Caribbean rum, the people who have influenced Caribbean rum, including Jamaican rum. We've talked to Lloyd Forbes, we've talked to Evan Brown. Coming up, I think it's, and Will correct me, I think it's September 23rd. We're going to be talking to Frank Ward of Mount Gay, former Worspa chairman, and an all-around wonderful guy. So we'll be chatting with Frank Ward. So.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. I just posted the link where you can register for that in the chat, so be sure to do that. But yeah, just to echo everything Matt said, and I know Christelle, you were looking at all the comments that were coming through. Kenroy and Peppie, I don't know if you guys could see those, but people were really overwhelmed and just had such a great time learning from everyone. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that and to drop the Great House news. I know this just started showing up in Nashville when this release came out. I live in Nashville, and people here were like over the moon excited at Hampden finally being available around here. So I know I'm going to be rationing what little bit I have left just so I can compare it to the new vintage that's coming out. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you in a couple of weeks for the session with Frank Ward. So looking forward to that.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye.